Hello and welcome back to another Loose Juice adventure. Today we're going to cover a very hot topic, and that is the death of the 883 Sportster. How dare Harley? It's a classic. It's brought so many people to the Harley brand, so many people to the road. Why would they do this? I wondered the same thing. I'm not a Harley simp. I'm just gonna say it. I don't own a Harley. Even though I've got a decent paying job, I still don't. I don't find I can't afford a brand new Harley. Let's just put it that way. Maybe someday I'll get a used Harley. I've got Kawasaki's, I got KTM's, and I have a Triumph. So I'm not bound by this idea that it has to be American and it has to be a Harley. It has to be a black Harley, whatever. Nope. So, being the data nerd that I am, I wanted to provide an analysis of potentially some of the reasons why did they discontinue the 883. And to do this, we have to go all the way back to 1957. I wanted to start this video with 57 because that was the introduction of the Sportster, and it was a sporty bike. It was meant to be competitive, and it was used for racing, and it has heritage in that. It came from the K series of bikes. I didn't do a ton of research on that, but needless to say, it was born to be sport. Keep that in mind. That will come back up again later. But yes, in front of us we have 57 Sportster according to Wikipedia. Cool bike. So what I wanted to do, what I set out to do, was do an analysis, and we're gonna walk through it. It's not, I'll try not to bore you to death with stats and numbers and up and down, left and right. It's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fugazi, it's a fagazi. Wolf of Wall Street reference. So I compiled a lot of different data, but I want to just go over what the hell you're looking at. I know graphs are not fun. Please don't click away. I promise I've got lots of opinions to share, and they're valuable. And I have a little bit of expertise in stats. I do a little bit of stat work for my work, my full-time job. YouTube is not a full-time job with 34 subscribers. Please subscribe. But I wanted to give a different take on the ongoing conversation around the Sportster, because I think people are like, how could they? It's it's a modern classic. It, again, like I was saying, it brought so many people to the brand. It's an essential part of Harley's identity, even if many in the Harley community call it a girl's bike. Again, I'm not beholden to Harley. I'm not a Harley guy. I do like some Harleys. If I could afford a road glide, or not road glide, the Lowrider ST, I really love that bike. But it's not worth it. I could own several motorcycles that perform just as good for the amount of money, the freaking mortgage you have to take out to get one of those. If you don't just have whatever 30 grand on hand in cash to hand over to Harley. I'm getting off on a tangent. So yes, graphs, numbers. On the bottom here, we've got a timeline from 1957 to 2022. On the left side, the left y-axis, this is the y-axis, this is the x-axis. On the left side y-axis, we've got MSRP, original MSRP from Harley. For the Sportster, 883 only. We're just gonna look at the 883 with an exception that I'll talk about in a little bit. So please, keyboard warriors, take your hands off the keyboard if you're about to try to defend the 1200 motor, the XR 1200, anything 1200. Just take it out of your vocabulary for the rest of this video. Please, it will make sense. On the right y-axis, I wanted to look at median household income and how that's trended over the exact same period of time. Then took it another step further and wanted something that we could use to tie together income, MSRP, and potentially somewhat looking at like inflation, for lack of a better word, because I was able to use a website, linked here. If you guys want this data, I guess I can share it. PM me on, or DM me on Instagram. I don't know. Or just type letter for letter the websites. I don't know. So, just as an example, the original 1957 Harley Sportster, I think it was 1103. So $1,103. Like, it's maybe not exact, but it's very, very close to that. Click what year? Oh, I went the wrong way. 57. So $1,100, and it's going to be listed as January 1957, but for the purpose of what we're doing, don't matter. Calculate that. So that would be almost $12,000 in buying power in today's money. I thought that was kind of interesting, but it's just one data point. So let's just try to blow this up a little bit. Alright, so we were just talking about MSRP of a Sportster 883 in 1957, and like I was saying, the left side shows MSRP. I know that there's not a lot of tags for, or what do you call them, minor tick marks, but this would be $1,000, the dark red line. This lighter line is a trend line. Essentially think of it like an average, but it shows a trend. It should be kind of self-explanatory. Using the data points of the MSRP, it shows the trend of what the MSRP of a Sportster was, and could be. You could use it as a predictive analytic, but since they cut it off in 2022, we know what the final MSRP is. Anyways, so you can see over the years, MSRP increases. Now, I mentioned median household income. That's what this green line is. And again, this lighter green line is the trend line for the actual median household income data. You will note I have the data for almost every year between 1990 to 2022, 2020. This was easily available on a website. I was able to grab it. I don't remember the exact website. It was some government website or a website that reports government data on median household income. This is actually official data. And then I just was able to do a Google search of 1957, and then I was trying to do just about every 5 years. So 1960, 1965, so on and so forth until you get to, looks like 1985. It was just going to be time intensive to manually Google every single year. And since I'm not getting paid to do this, I figured the trend line would be able to build out the picture of what these median household incomes would have been, even though they're not plugged into this graph. Doesn't really matter. That's from 57 until 85. Whatever. The point is that MSRP went up as income went up throughout the years. But then we get back to what I was just talking about, and that's buying power, the value of a dollar, which is sort of our inflation metric, if you will. I know inflation's a hot topic. Don't talk politics in my comment section. You will get booted out so fast. Don't do it. Inflation. The value of a dollar. I'm not an economist. This is not a finance lesson or an economy lesson. But what I can definitively say, using the tools and the data that's available to me, is that the buying power of the dollar, if you looked at, let's Let's just look at the damn data again. In 1957, in today's money, the MSRP on that, or really the buying power, the amount that you could buy with $1,103 was $11,814 in today's money. Which is interesting because the MSRP at the beginning of 2022, January of 2022, so the 20, just as a, this was the MSRP of the bike. But then even between when they listed the MSRP of the 2022 Rubber Mount Evo 883 Sportster, 11,249, because of inflation that's happened, for whatever reasons, again, don't talk about politics in my freaking comment section. Don't do it. The adjusted for inflation amount is $11,850 as of August 2022. Huh. What does that tell us? What does that mean in the conversation that's going on? So, let's go back here. That's fine. Come on now. We went back here. Now we kind of understand these are the figures of what would these values be, what would these MSRP values be in today's money. Or really, again, it's really just about buying power, because that doesn't mean back in the 50s through the 80s, just for example, that even though the value of the dollar, sort of ties to a $15,000 in the weird AMF years, that doesn't mean that AMF would have sold that bike for that amount, and clearly they didn't. Their MSRPs throughout those years, pretty much, they're almost directly on the trend line. So it was the value of the dollar that changed through that time period. And I just use that as an example because these are kind of weird, wonky one-offs that happened when AMF owned them. So, odd trend. But the trend that you're seeing here is that the buying power of the dollar is statistically trending downward. So, where did that lead us next? And I was thinking about this, and this is kind of an opinion I hold about the Sportster in particular, but also Harley as a brand. This is kind of their shtick, and has been for a long time, is that for the Sportster, the original Sportster, I didn't find an exact figure, but I think just from watching YouTube and stuff, I think that those sorts of bikes made, let's just say 30 horsepower. It was not a lot. 30 horsepower, 30 torque. I don't know if that's right. Put it in the comments what it is. I don't care about being wrong. Just, I think it's okay to be wrong. These bikes didn't produce a lot of power, but I think the point I want to make is that as other manufacturers evolved and re-evolved, it had a revolution, they did better over the same time period in making higher performing, probably maybe even higher quality bikes in the small bike segment, in this sporty bike segment particularly. This bike started out as a sporty bike. It's in the freaking name. It's a Sportster. It's meant to be race, competition. Competition hot in 1958. You've got, I found it before. There's like the major significant changes by model year from 1957 up until 2014. In these early years, I think it was like, there it is, the 72 Ironhead 1000, which again, that's not the 883, but that was 61 horse. People were focused on making these bikes faster, and more power to them, they should. Oh, excuse me. But then what I found what is it, 1990? Yeah. So 98 they do dual spark plug heads and high performance cams, and that seems to be kind of like, I don't know, it just seemed like after this point in time, it doesn't seem like Harley touched this bike. They stopped doing that transition of like, oh, we're gonna make it better, we're gonna make it faster, no, it's just the 883 motor. Yep, here's your Sportster. It's our beginner bike. Or if you're a real biker, it's a woman's bike, right? It's a lady bike. I don't agree with that logic. I think I know plenty of guys that ride Sportsters, and there's also a ton of different Sportsters. That's not the conversation though, because we're focusing on the 883. With that in mind, though, I did actually want to call one thing out, because I don't think I did it already. From 73 or whatever the fuck until 1985, there was no 883 motor. It was the Ironhead 1000. So yes, this analysis is focused on the 883, but I had to include the Iron 1000 in the data because there was no 883. So it was the 883 replacement, but then when Harley bought back the brand from AMF, they went to the rigid mount Evo 883. So it still tells you something. Just calm down. My point, I think it speaks for itself in that from the 50s, the 1950s, like the 50s, it's 2022. In 2007, they released the Nightster. This is also the year that this bike got electronic fuel injection. 57 horsepower, which, it's okay. Pretty much 64 foot-pounds of torque. I think to comparable bikes, whatever. It's not. I don't think it's not a fast bike. It's not meant to be a fast bike. But that's actually my point. It's in the name. It's supposed to be a Sportster, but it isn't fast relative to today or 2007 or what I would argue is like from the 2000s and up. It stopped probably earlier than that, and I think there's Harley people that have owned Sportsters before I was even alive that would argue that the Sportster stopped being the sporty bike long ago, and it transitioned into like, it's just a cruiser that has a name that kind of is an ode to the 50s bike, to the 60s bike, when they were focused on competition and making it faster and blah blah. But they kept this 883 motor around, even though they had the Ironhead 1000 and they had the 1100 for a while. I think that was like maybe a year or two. I don't remember. I guess I didn't look at it that hard. And then obviously, my 1200 motor guys are screaming at me right now, like, yeah, well they spent more time and effort on the 1200 motor, which I think is the preferred motor now in a Sportster, up until the release of the new Rev Max motors. Again, we'll get to that in a bit. I'm talking like real Harley, not new Harley. They weren't really focused on performance of the 883, but they kept it around and they kept it with the Sportster name. It's a sporty bike. Another huge cool call out is the XR 1200. We're going to take a side tangent here real quick because I think this bike is amazing, and it's not the biggest horsepower, but this bike I think has the respect of the community in terms of it being a Sportster and it being a sporty Sportster. It's meant to be quick, and it kind of highlights what maybe they could have done with the 883, but they didn't. And again, they just kept it around. This bike unfortunately didn't sell that well. I think this was probably a marketing disaster. In the United States, I think it was around for like 4 years. I don't know. It's probably right in front of me. I'm just not looking that close. I think that this speaks to what Harley can do, but chose not to do with the 883. And then you've got the later models, the 2010, you get the Sportster 48, which Didn't they? I thought they put the horsepower. 72. So wait a minute. Am I reading that right? Is that making 55 horsepower? Oh, that was oh, I'm a dumb. So 57 horsepower out of 1200. I don't even know what the horsepower figures are for the 883. More to the point, maybe it's probably hard to find them because nobody wants to. It's not that important to Harley guys that the Sportster fast, but I think that's the fucking problem. Don't call something sporty. Don't call it a Sportster if it's not sporty and it's not competitive, and it's like it just grew up, got a beer gut, and got divorced. Used to be the track star. We'll just call it that. I don't want to go with the old classic, the captain of the football team. It was the sporty model back in the day, and now it hasn't aged well. So, flash forward, the writing up has been on the wall all along. Harley finally figured it out, but a little bit too late for the 883, and probably even for the 1200 motor. They went back to making the Sportster sporty, and people aren't happy with that. But again, over the same period of time, the big four, the Japanese brands and any other British brands, we won't go into Triumph and Norton because just no. It's probably it's its own video. There's plenty of other discussions of the rise and fall of those brands, but compared to the big four, let's just say they're competitors. They just didn't make the advancements over the same period of time. So yes, I think the writing has been on the wall all along. Harley needed to develop a sporty Sportster again, and they did. They threw that big old 1250cc liquid cooled badass Mo Power baby. They threw that bike out on the market, and it's flying off the shelves. I don't know if that's going to continue to be the case. I think the initial impressions are the 1250 motor is pretty. It rips. The Pan America sells like crazy. I would venture to say we're going to start seeing more of these 1250cc motors in more of Harley's lineup, and start that transition towards performance on all of the other bikes. And I think that goes hand in hand with emissions regulations that are coming. And we may only get to ride motorcycles for another 13 years. I think, isn't that 2035? I thought it was supposed to be a cutoff. I don't know, of internal combustion. I don't, whatever. Again, don't talk politics. But I guess I think while we can enjoy motorcycles, we can enjoy Harleys, and we want a sporty bike from Harley. The Bronx? Did somebody say the Bronx? Oh, weird. Weird, very strange. We have the Sportster S, and it finally put to bed the long, well-aged 883 that should have been probably not been produced past the year 2000, in my opinion. I think they could have let it die and focused on a lot of the other bikes in the brand, and there were a lot of great models that have come through Harley Davidson since 2000, and they've not. I don't know. I think there's a call for a beginner bike from Harley. Technically, the 883 is that. I wouldn't recommend it to somebody as their first bike. That's just me. I don't fit on it, so I kind of am a weird exception. I literally am 6'5". I just don't. I physically don't fit on it. It's not comfortable. I'm sure I could get a big old seat, or taller seat, or the tall boy seat. I think that's a thing, and the forward controls and blah blah. But No, no, no. Just no. Because the price of these bikes, I did the freaking analysis. Your dollar is not worth as much, and this bike has just not changed that much. The MSRP has gone up in a trend. It correlates with income. So yes, they weren't like, I don't know, I guess at certain points in time they increased the MSRP quite a bit, and I don't know why they did that after a freaking recession in 2008. I mean, look, the price of the Sportster went up, like, it jumped. So did your buying power, technically. But I don't know how that's the case. And why would you spend your discretionary income on a bike that just, it's kind of meh. It's played out. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with these 883 bikes and the 1200 bikes in the used market in the future, because the chopper scene's already a pretty big deal. Again, obviously we're not the current motorcycle industry is not the beginning of the chopper industry. It's kind of the reinvigoration of it, or maybe if you're a chopper guy, you say it never ended. I don't know. Beats me. It just seems like there's a lot of visibility on building choppers, and I love it. It's cool. But this bike needed to go away a long time ago, and Harley could have spent more time and energy building out the Bronx, or they could have had the Sportster S a lot sooner. I think is my point, is that they needed to make that revolution of the brand, the 883 Sportster, or really just the Sportster. They needed to make that change sooner, and if they just lopped off the dead weight that was the 883 motor and focused entirely on the 1200 until they could bring a liquid-cooled, fast, high horsepower bike to the market, I think they could have got there a lot sooner. Yes, I hear you in the back. You're saying, but the V-Rod. Yeah. Well, that's a muscle cruiser. It's not supposed to be a sporty bike. It's a go fast bike. Yes, it's liquid cooled. Yes, it was a gigantic failure. Wrong time. So yes, I see that. But the Sportster is a different bike than that, and they were going for a different market, and I think the Sportster's for a younger market, maybe. I'm not saying it is. Maybe it is. It's for a newer rider market, and even with more power, I think many would agree with me that over time, the starting entry level of horsepower has also gone up. In some cases, it's probably not. I think Suzuki TU250 is probably stayed about the same. But I wouldn't recommend that as a beginner bike either, because you get so freaking bored of it. That topic is so tired. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. So, yes, your dollar doesn't buy as much bike now as it did in the 70s. Weird. Okay, what do we do about it? You want a Sportster? You want to continue the brand of Sportster? Find the Sportster S, or find the Nightster. Also, the Nightster 975, and I'm talking with the new motor, not the 2007 Nightster. Like, that's not an entry level bike either, but whatever. It's probably a different topic for a different video. Anywho, this is probably way too long, but I just think the conversation that's happening about, people being pissed off that the 883 is getting lopped off. I don't know. Put your nostalgia in a glass jar and dig a hole in the yard and bury it, because why waste effort? Why carry that? There's so many better bikes. Harley did the right thing, and they should have done it a lot sooner. That's my piece. And with that, I'm going to end this one. Thank you for tagging along. If you could do so, please go ahead and hit the like button. If you like this content, please subscribe. And if you disagree with me, put it in the comments. But be nice about it. I like I said earlier, I don't care about being wrong. It's not important to me to be 100% right. And if I got something terribly wrong and you can't contain yourself, you've just got to put it in the keyboard and you have to put it out on the internet. Okay, but be nice about it. You ain't gotta be a dick. Just tell me what I said wrong. I'll correct the record. If I need to make a follow-up video, I'll do that. This is an opinion piece. I did use some data. What do you got? What do you have to say? I'm genuinely interested to hear other people's thoughts. And Harley simps or any Japanese bike owners are welcome in my chat, in my comment section. So be kind to each other. Be kind to me, please. But I guess you don't have to. If you want to be a dick, at the end of the day, that's on you. It's not on me. Thank you, and keep it loose.